Today, I'm going to share with you my experience of trying to recreate a modern-day version of Hal Heal's field trip to a round barn where he claimed he found a solution for aiming pool balls. From what I understand, it's where the centered edge aiming system was born. I first learned about the round barn watching Shuffett's True Series video on YouTube. Stan often says, true knowledge comes from experience. So this is my personal experience at the round barn trying to gain knowledge. I'm a new CTE student, and I just recently purchased the Center Pocket music book. I'm sharing my journey at the round barn because I have the opportunity and means to do so. I guess this is what guys like me do during a pandemic when they have too much time on their hands. I do not claim what I discovered is right or wrong. It's just one man's trip to a round barn in my attempt to figure out for myself what a round barn has to do with aiming billiard balls. As you can see from the video, the round barn is actually a nearby fire station with a round water tower on top. I programmed a drone to orbit 360 degrees around the center of the fire station. I slowed it down in post so every 1 second of time the drone is flying on the screen, it moves 1 degree around the tower. So in 360 seconds or 6 minutes, the drone will fly around the entire round barn. In honor of the 28 steps Hal Heal took at the round barn, as described by Stan in the CTE True Series, I'm not going to offer any opinions or input during this time about what Hal was thinking, so you can draw your own conclusions about the true meaning of the round barn at this time. For the first 28 steps, I paused the video for an additional second to represent a step Hal took around the barn according to Stan. You can move back and forth by reversing the video if you want to step back the other direction. After 28 seconds, I no longer pause the video and I proceed with my interpretation of what Hal was thinking about on that day some 70 years ago. As a mathematician, I struggle with the concept of a new center. I think of all round things as having one mathematical center. The only new point I see as we move around the barn is the point on the circumference of the barn directly between Hal and the center of the barn. These are the 360 tick marks Stan refers to in CTE. Stan says when we aim, we are on the hunt for the one tick mark that works. Now, if you focus on the barn itself and nothing else, you could not distinguish one tick mark from the other 359 tick marks, because on a round barn, every tick mark is identical when you just take the barn into account. I believe the secret of Hal's round barn aiming riddle is everything but the barn. Hal knew all the vital information you need to find the right tick mark turned out not to be on the barn itself, but rather using the edges of the barn as reference lines with objects in the background. I believe in Hal's case he would set up a target behind the barn and then use both edges of the barn as reference lines that he would in turn use to find the one tick mark to shoot his target on the opposite side of the barn, right through the barn. Let me explain. On the left side of the screen, you're going to see a helicopter come into the picture. At exactly one tick mark along the drone's flight, the edge of the barn will line up exactly with the center of the helicopter. We will call this reference line left edge barn to center helicopter. In the video, this left edge alignment happens at the 162 tick mark. So I'm going to speed up the video until we get close, and then we'll step our way in the rest of the way, and I'll pause the video. So here we are on the left edge barn to center helicopter line. I like to believe Hal stuck some sort of marker in the ground, somewhere along this line, at a known distance from the center of the barn or the edge of the barn. Now I'm going to fast forward until I can see the helicopter pass the right edge of the barn at about tick mark 214, and once again step my way back exactly to the right edge barn to center helicopter line, which is on tick mark 208. You can see the helicopter coming into the view, and after I can see the entire helicopter, I'm going to slowly step my way back to the exact aim line I'm interested in. Now we are on the right edge barn to center helicopter line, and once again I believe Hal stuck some sort of marker in the ground somewhere along this line at the same distance from the barn he used to mark the left edge barn to center helicopter line. It's easier to explain where I'm headed with a PowerPoint presentation. Let's assume my target is a helicopter and I have to shoot the helicopter through the barn at ground level like I believe Hal did. Since I can't see through the barn, the only aiming references available to use are the edges of the barn. If I walk around the barn at a constant distance from the barn, I can use the points at which I line up the edge of the barn with the helicopter to plant two markers, which form an angle between the markers and the helicopter. One way to bisect this angle is to find the midpoint between the two markers, or drones in my case, and establish a firing line between the midpoint of the markers and the center of the barn. Now, if I fire a gun from the midpoint of the markers along the line through the center of the barn, I should be able to shoot the helicopter, actually the center of the helicopter, without ever having to look at the helicopter itself. Since I was flying a drone instead of walking, I had to find another way to bisect the left edge helicopter right edge angle by using the two edge line tick marks I noted earlier. If I find the one tick mark exactly between the 162 and 208, I will be on the exact same line as if I planted markers on the ground. So I just found the midpoint of the edge tick marks by taking the average, which turned out to be tick mark 185. So let's fly the drone there. So here we are at the midpoint between the two edge reference lines, and I think some 70 years ago, to the best of his ability, Hal fired a bullet right through the center of the barn at his tick mark 185. Then he walked up to the barn, stuck his eye up to the bullet hole, and you know what he saw when he peeked through it? This is when I like to imagine Hal Hoole saw a solution for aiming billiard balls for the very first time, and smiled. And that, my friends, is why you don't want to hide behind a round barn when Hal Hoole is chasing you with a gun. I was so excited about my discovery, I had to tell someone. Since I've been flying drones around the firehouse for a couple of days, I decided to call the fire chief and tell him all about Hal Hoole, the round barn, and CTE. I told him it mean the world to me and my 11 YouTube subscribers if I could fire a missile from over that elementary school through his firehouse and blow up that helicopter in Veterans Park. Then I'll fly my drone up and look through the hole. Son, what's your name? Wait a second. My name? Did you hear the part about the round barn? My name? It's Landon. Landon Shuffett from Greensburg, Kentucky. And then I hung up. Well, that guy clearly doesn't know anything about building a YouTube channel, so we need to recreate Hal's round barn experience somewhere else. Every computer scientist starts their programming journey writing a program that simply says, "Hello World." In honor of Hal Hoole, the first shot I ever hit using the edges of a cue ball as aiming references was a recreation of Hal Hoole's round barn experience on my pool table. This works anywhere on the table, so grab a ball, throw it anywhere on the table, and follow along. This is not how CTE really works in practice, since there's no object ball involved and I'm using a single lens camera, and our bodies have two cameras, but if you've never used the edges of a cue ball as an aiming reference, it serves as a good introduction for referencing the edges to find the one tick mark on the cue ball you want to hit without ever looking at the target. The first thing to do is line up the right edge of the ball with the center of the pocket and set some sort of reference line marker. I use the edges of an old shaft to establish my reference lines. Now go to the other edge of the ball and do the same thing. Create a reference line that denotes the line between the edge of the ball and the center of the pocket. You might have to swing a bit wide to see everything clearly and slowly step your way back to the exact edge center pocket line. Now for the hard part, at least for me anyway. You need to create a visual perception that takes both lines into account simultaneously so you can visualize the one tick mark on the circumference of the ball we plan to launch our missile. This is where the genius of Stan Shuffett really shines. He's a master at visual intelligence and understanding perceptions to help you see multiple reference lines simultaneously from a parallax viewing position, which he explains in the book, to align to tiny tick marks on both the cue ball and the object ball to help you find the non-imaginary shot line. He calls it the nissle, which I think of as Hal's missile line at the single tick mark on the round barn. CTE is a lot like learning Chinese. In the beginning, everything looks like chicken scratch, and the wise men all talk in parables. But I wouldn't be doing this video unless my gut told me CTE could be one of those E equals MC squared type discoveries that would have not been brought to light for another 100 years if it were not for the combined work of Hal and Stan. CTE needs to be taken very seriously by pool players until proven otherwise. That's not a joke or me being sarcastic, I believe it. So on behalf of the pool world, I'd like to thank you, Stan, for your massive amount of hard work, sacrifice, determination, dealing with skeptics, and who knows what else you had to deal with behind the scenes. We can never repay you for the CTE gift you gave the pool world. So here we are back at our Hello CTE shot with our edge to center pocket reference lines in view. Now, without looking at the pocket, create a visual perception that bisects these reference lines with the idea you want to find the one tick mark on the cue ball to launch your missile. Now it's just a matter of routine and focus to make sure you hit the tick mark. Oh, I almost forgot. There's a unique sound a ball makes when it hits the center of a pocket. You will know when you found the right tick mark by the sound the ball makes entering a pocket. This is the sound a ball makes hitting the center of a pocket. This is the sound of winning games. This is the sound of winning sets. This is the sound of winning matches. This is the sound of winning tournaments. This is the sound of putting food on the table for a professional player. Crave that sound and grade yourself on the quality of your music. Learn how to correct yourself when you don't hear it. So, where am I after my round barn experience? Well, the FBI is in hot pursuit, and I still spell CTE backwards. So in a nutshell, I'm a hot mess. But here's my approach. The first step is to get your aiming reference lines. Remember, there is always more than one reference line, which is a major strength of the system. Don't go to step 2 unless you have more than one reference line. It doesn't make any sense. Once you have those lines, put yourself into the best sighting position to see all the aiming reference lines simultaneously. Remember, it's everything but the barn. There's a ton of visual stimulation out there, so it's your job to sort it all out and create the initial shot picture in your head. This gets you 90% there. Just like the old days when finding a radio station, you know you're on the right station when you get close, but it still sounds fuzzy. So you have to jump around a bit before it sounds crystal clear. Same with CTE. You know you're in the neighborhood of the nissel, but if the picture is still fuzzy, you need to fine-tune it until the nissel station comes in crystal clear. The fine-tuning is done by blending the aiming references with the sighting visuals simultaneously by sweeping, stepping, and gearing until you clearly see the nissel in your mind's eye. A crystal clear nissel is the ultimate goal for the rest of your CTE life. Once you clearly see the one and only nissel, it directly points you to the one and only center tick mark on the round barn to fire Hal's missile. Now listen to the quality of your center pocket music and grade yourself for any future adjustments. Then you just rinse and repeat. Keep it simple and don't try to overcomplicate things. Good luck creating your own center pocket music. There's not a better sound on the planet for pool players.